Thanks for tuning in to another show in the next reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it. Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
It is Pete Wright over here.
On today's episode, we have invited producer-director Bill Banowsky to talk about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, a movie he likes. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really pleased to be here.
We are thrilled to have you joining us to chat with us about you and your career and, of course, this fantastic Coen Brothers movie. Before we get into the movie, let's talk a little bit about you. Your career is an interesting one because you've kind of been, is it fair to say, all over the map as far as your journey to,
No, totally.
to get to producing and directing?
I would say, So I've been in the film and around the film industry for the last 25 plus years. I grew up in Southern California around the film industry. I went to, junior high at Malibu Park Junior High when Sean Penn and Rob Lowe and, Emilio Estevez were there. I mean, I was around that sort of, and that was back in the 70s. And so back in the 70s, there were 3 broadcast networks. There was no such thing as cable or anything like that. So everything you saw on television was filmed around where you lived. And you had this sort of idea that everything revolved around Southern California. And so a good way to fix that is when you're a senior in high school, have your parents tell you that we're moving from Malibu, California to Norman, Oklahoma, which is what they told me. And so I
moved
to Norman, Oklahoma. And so that was crazy. I ended up graduated from Norman High School, went to undergraduate University of Oklahoma, had a great time in Norman eventually. The first week I was there, though, a funny kind of movie story. I was there and I had one friend and he said, "Hey, you want to hang out with us this weekend? We're going to go over to so-and-so's house and there'll be a few people and blah, blah, blah." So yeah, I guess so. And so we went over there. Now in Malibu, you're going out and, people are, smoking pot and drinking. This was all very different kind of a thing. It was all wholesome. We went over to some girl's house and then we were all going to go to a movie. And so the movie we happened to choose was Rocky Horror Picture Show. Now this is the fall of 1978. That film came out in 1975. And I saw it in Los Angeles when it came out. And it was just like any other movie. It wasn't, treated any differently.
It hadn't turned into what it is now.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing yet.
But apparently by 1978, it had become a thing. So we go to this movie theater and there's all this interactive behavior going on between the audience. And then I go, wow, this is so weird how people in Oklahoma watch movies. They watch movies in this interactive fashion. Where have I moved to? And so that was my funny landing in Oklahoma story. I went to law school in Texas. After that, I practiced law for 10 years, like you say, a master of, jack of all trades, master of none is kind of what I became. I after 10 years of law practice, I went into work with a private equity firm out of Austin, Texas. I moved to Austin from Dallas where I was living. And we were kind of a master of the universe consolidating the radio broadcasting industry. That was my time. When I was still pretty young, I was the general counsel of this company that was becoming the biggest radio owner and ruining terrestrial broadcast radio because literally no one listens to radio anymore because there's 20 minutes of commercials for every hour. There used to be, before we started the consolidation, 5 minutes. And it was consolidated because the laws changed in 1996 to allow unlimited ownership of radio stations. And there used to be really limited caps. And so we did that for about 4 years, sold out to Clear Channel, and it became the biggest radio company. And I'd made a lot of money on paper during that time. I got stock in this thing and it was just flying, and we sold to Clear Channel. We just all thought it was going to go up. I was one of those guys who actually made a fortune on paper and lost it all lost it all within a couple of years. The stock just went down. Just radio, internet just went in and just pounded. And I just hung on for dear life. And that's had a big effect on me, over the next, 25, 30 years after that. It's like, okay, how do you kind of regroup? And before I realized I was broke and I thought I had money, I thought, well, I'm going to just look to do what I want to do. We'd sold out to this other big radio company. I would just come to the same office that we were in Austin every day, and I would research what companies are out there. I was still pretty young back then. This is 2000. This is 25 years ago. And I'm 64 now. So what is that? I'm with 39 years old and I'm figuring out what I want to do with my life. At that time, in 2000, the movie theater industry was upside down. It was all in bankruptcy. AMC, Cinemark, Regal, they had all overbuilt. This was right around the time that we went from sloped floor seating in theaters to stadium. And they just devoured themselves, these companies. They over leveraged, they overbuilt. They didn't realize the effect that stadium would have on killing the slope floor theater.
Right.
And so they were all in bankruptcy. And I'm studying the Wall Street analyst reports on these various companies, and I come across a company called Landmark Theaters, which you guys may have heard of.
Oh, yeah.
At the time, it was the biggest art house chain in the country, and they were everywhere. And they were this legacy art house theater company. They were bankrupt and they were being sold. And so I started looking at, I brought in two guys to kind of be my financial partners. One of them was a guy who was the CFO of the radio company that I was with, Jeff Armstrong, who had made a lot of money in a previous life before. So unlike me, he actually ended up having, some resources to work with. And the other was Mark Cuban. Now, Mark, at this time, we'd gotten to know Mark during our radio days because his company, broadcast.com, was based upon, basically they would stream radio stations over the internet in exchange for getting inventory to sell from the radio companies. And so we did transactions with him, got to know him. I brought Mark in, I brought Jeff in. I went to Delaware where this bankruptcy was happening. I went in the lawyer's office. I spent, a full day there reading all about the leases and the P&L. And my legal background helped me. I was a real estate lawyer. So, leases were natural. And there's 60 movie theater leases across the country and 60 P&Ls. And I came out of that having, we studied that. We made a bid. We did not get it. But it made me realize a couple of things. Number one, the theater business could be profitable. The biggest costs that jumped out were your rent to your landlord, and the other one was the rent you pay for film. So you paid back then, in the Landmark days, back when most of the stuff they were playing was really truly independent stuff, or but from many majors like Miramax and the like.
Sure.
They're paying 35-40% film rental. Now we pay more than that. And so I had this idea. I said, okay, I'm reading all these analyst reports. They say that Regal, Cinemark, AMC, they're all going to shed a bunch of theaters. They have to out of bankruptcy. So all these theaters are going to pop up. Landmark, as you guys probably know, having probably been to some of them, they're old slope floor theaters mostly. So the idea that I came up with, and I started a company called Magnolia Pictures, is I wrote a business plan about we would go about and pick off all these theaters that were going to be shed from the big theater companies and create a duplicate to Landmark, create our own Landmark since we didn't end up buying Landmark. And then we would also, importantly, get into acquiring independent film and distributing it ourselves. So we would eliminate that cost of film rental because we would own the films. And so I started researching this. Mark Cuban and Jeff Armstrong and a few others invested in this company. I found this guy in New York, Eamon Bowles, who had worked for Miramax. He had done something called the Shooting Gallery. He was like a guy, like the guy in independent film distribution, one of the real kings back in the late end of the last century. And so he liked my idea. He joined me, and we started this company, and we started acquiring movies. One of our early movies we had was Capturing the Freedmans, which was nominated for an Academy Award, a documentary film.
Yeah.
And, we had Read My Lips, this really great Jacques Audiard film, which the New York Times called a brilliant Hitchcockian thriller. I mean, we had some great films that we were picking up for. Our business plan was to pick these things up for nothing or next to nothing on a revenue split. So we were having success getting our films lined up, but what we failed to realize is that I was just wrong. My assumption that these theater companies were going to let go of these movie theaters and I could just go pick them up, that proved not to be true at all. Having now been in the business as long as I've been, I understand now that is not going to happen because Cinemark's not going to let go of a slope floor theater across the street from their new stadium theater. So some jackass like I can come in and,
compete with them. Yeah.
They're not going to do that. And so we struggled the first few years. And by then I had realized I was broke as well. And I had kids, and I ended up selling Magnolia Pictures to Mark Cuban and his partner, Todd Wagner, in 2003, just a few years after we started it. Eamon stayed on. I stayed on as the CEO of that company. They then went back and bought Landmark Theaters. And at that time, Mark was a pretty difficult guy to work for. And they promptly ran off the CEO of Landmark, and then they asked me to go in that place. And so I
take over, huh?
I did that for a few years. And then Eamon stayed on and is still the president of Magnolia to this day. And my film, I'm proud to say, was released by Magnolia Pictures.
Saw that.
I guess the reason I'm on here, A Savage Art. And I will say this, it looks like, the fix is in. Yeah, your film is released by Magnolia because you started Magnolia. I promise you that's not true. Number one, Mark Cuban may not even know that he's released my film. Probably he doesn't. Two, Eamon is just, you should meet Eamon. You should have him on a show. He's just so colorful. I guess it's probably true that I wouldn't have had maybe access to get him to watch it had I not been friends with him for 25 plus years. But there's no way he would have released the film unless he really loved it, and he did. And so, but it's a documentary film, as you guys know. I mean, there's not much of a business for documentary films anymore, theatrically at all.
Yeah, I mean, the market has changed so much, and I definitely want to talk about your film. But before we do, having had kind of a backdoor view of the industry, working, kind of building Magnolia Pictures and working in the industry. I mean, the market has changed so much now as far as how things are run, as far as since post-COVID, movie theaters are really struggling. Everything is kind of shifted as far as how things are going theatrically, and certainly more for documentaries, independent films. I mean, how do you see from where you were when you helped found Magnolia to today, as far as the way the market's gone?
You mean from a theatrical business, so like movie theater perspective?
Yeah.
I have kind of moved towards the movie theater business since I sold Magnolia. I ran Magnolia and Landmark for Mark and Todd for a number of years, a few years. And then 2008, I had a chance to buy some theaters in North Carolina that were being sold by Regal because the DOJ was forcing them to sell because they bought another company. And I ended up making a good deal for that. And so I ended up kind of building myself back. I started my own theater idea in Austin in 2011 called Violet Crown, which was a really successful concept. It was a 4-screen theater. Each auditorium had 50 seats. It was kind of the first micro cinema, that, if you will. Tim League, who owned and started Alamo Drafthouse, was one of my investors in that. And now that he has sold Alamo to Sony, he's starting his own micro cinema business, I hear, in New York. And so I'm curious to know about that. So I then, expanded Violet Crown. Violet Crown in Austin was very successful. We then started one here in Santa Fe. I don't know if you've ever been to that.
I'm going to have to check it out because I
down the rail yard.
Okay, I haven't, but I'll have to look.
And so we did that. We opened one in Charlottesville, Virginia. We opened one in Dallas, Texas. We had 4. And COVID knocked us in the dirt, the cinema industry. We survived, oddly enough. I mean, it was a moonshot that we survived. And it's because of all things, Senator John Cornyn, who's a jackass from Texas, Republican, and Amy Klobuchar, who's a Democrat. They had this idea during COVID that we need to save independent theaters and live theaters with some grant money. And they somehow put together a bill, and they somehow got Trump to sign it at the end of 2020. And it was like, literally, it's like, what are the chances? And all of that money saved our industry. It didn't save Regal and AMC and those guys because they didn't qualify. But for the independents, it absolutely saved us. It just provided the money we needed. So then we were able to make it, into 2021 are dead years. 2022 it was a soft year. We're starting to come back. 23 is looking pretty good. 24 is looking better. Then 25, it was a little better for the industry, not better for us, my theaters. But by 23, we'd suffered enough that I made the decision to try to sell all the theaters I had except for the one in Santa Fe where I live. And I found a buyer for them. They bought Violet Crown, the other locations. I have since changed the name of our theater here in Santa Fe to Sky Cinemas. It's an 11-screen theater. It's fantastic. It's my favorite theater in the country. It's sort of, I've been in every theater in the country. So I was able to really design it based on my favorite things about my favorite theaters. And this has a lot of ArcLight theater in it. If you've ever been into the ArcLight in Hollywood, or these, black, rounded screen, curved screens, all black, lots of space between the front row and the screen. It's sort of an ArcLight like cinema. It also has my concept of smaller cinemas, which I think is more efficient. So we have 10 theaters that are 50 to 60 seats, one that's 150 seats. And we got we got 30 taps of beer. We have a full restaurant. It's a great spot. It's a really wonderful spot. So I believe that theaters will survive, but not all theaters will survive. I think a lot of the mall theaters are going to have a hard time. I think a lot of the suburban theaters are going to have a hard time. But there is a desire, I believe, for people to have a relatively inexpensive out-of-home entertainment experience. And that's what theaters provide. And it's a unique experience because you don't, if you're watching, a film that just came out on streaming at home, you're not getting the same experience. You're stopping the thing to go answer what your wife is yelling at you for, or you're, or you're taking a phone call, you're looking at your phone, or you're doing these things. You're not feeling that communal,
the sort of culture of theaters.
The culture of theaters. Yeah, everyone, the emotions that people have in a group setting with a bunch of strangers in the dark.
Well, I gotta ask, man, because I just walked out of Avatar, Fire and Ash, and I have thoughts. I saw it the way Cameron intended me to see it, right? I saw it with the 3D and the everything, the biggest screen and all the stuff. I did that. And I am wondering, from your perspective, what is it about the technological shifts that we're seeing that are actually sticking from your perspective running an 11th screen theater? What is it that
3D?
Yeah, what works?
3D is proving to be kind of a maybe. I mean, Avatar is a rare film that comes along where 3D has some market to it, but even 3D in our business, we're still doing slightly more business with 2D than 3D on that particular film. Here's the problem with Avatar is it didn't need to be 3 hours long. And you can't,
that's one of the problems with Avatar.
Oh, it's one of the problems.
Right. Yeah.
It didn't need to cost, well, maybe it did need to cost $400 million, but I would tell you this, I would much rather, have 10 Marty Supremes than one Avatar. Just take that $400 million and make 10 Marty Supremes, or even 10 Song Sung Blue. It's a little bit soft, I get it, but it's an audience pleaser, and it's a sweet film, and it's got good performances, and it's got good production value. I love Song Sung Blue, that I'm almost embarrassed to say, but it's terrific. I think you need more films like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I mean, you got to find story-driven films, not technical-driven films, to save this business, I believe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're going to have that because if you look at the films that we play, we're a mix, a hybrid of art film and big releases. You know, when Five Freddy's or whatever comes out, it'll do 10 times as much business down at the mall as it will do at my theater. And we'll play it minimally just because I think that's a Sony film maybe, and we got to take care of our film distributors.
Sure.
But, you know, when... what's the P.T. Anderson film that just came out this year?
Another.
One battle after
when
another.
that comes out, we're going to way overperform. So when Warner Brothers or whoever will invest in that kind of film, that's what we need for cinema. We need more P.T. Anderson. We need more Coen Brothers. I think we need more great filmmakers, and I don't consider James Cameron to be a great filmmaker. I consider him to be a great technical filmmaker. He makes great. I mean, but God dang, the dialogue was so stupid in Avatar. It was, you can't get those 3 hours back too. That's the other thing.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
You can't get those 3 hours back.
His dialogue has always been his
So
stumbling block, I will say. Yeah. So.
Well, I think it's fascinating though, because I think this is we talk about the culture of theaters, and you're in this really unique perspective to look at what makes people stick. When I go to my Cinemark, no disrespect to Cinemark, there's no culture of theater there. Like there are people who do. They pull out their phones. They're busy in the theater, and even though the seats are big and they're huge recliners, and there's now like an acre of space between me and the next person, I still am distracted by that. And when I go to the indie theater, I know that the people who are sitting in those seats agree on a standard of behavior when they're watching a movie.
Yeah.
And I wonder what role you have as a theater owner to cultivate that. And is it possible to even scale that anymore?
Yeah, I think so. I'm opening a second theater in Santa Fe. There's an old single screen theater on the old Midtown campus, and that not that anyone listening would know what that is, but we're making it in. We're adding a second screen too. We're gonna have a 2-screen theater. It's gonna have a coffee shop every day in the lobby that opens at 8 in the morning every day. We're going to start showing movies at 9 o'clock in the morning every day, and we're going to have 2 theaters in there, and we're going to just be showing and a lot of repertory stuff, a lot of great stuff. People, what we know is people do love to come out to the movies and see great movies that are from the past in a movie theater experience. We do it constantly here at our theater in Santa Fe, and those film events overperform. The other thing I'd say is about the seating. So the recliner seating that you just described, that was transformative for the industry, 15 years ago when they first came out.
Yes.
Once you got rid of the old bubblegum sticky seat and you put in that thing that reclines, you reduced the seat count by more than half, but you doubled the box office across the board. That I think that is not necessarily a model that will continue to sustain itself, because a lot of people don't want to just go and lay down. It's like you fall asleep if you're laying back in this thing. But there needs to be something more than what the old 30-year-old, 40-year-old cinema seat looks like, and it's a tight, and we think we've developed that. When the same seat that we have in our theater in Santa Fe is the exact same seat we're putting over in our new theater, and it's sort of a hybrid. It's in between. It's big. It's got it, but it's not a recliner. But we have a lot of seat. We have 48-inch row spacing, so you people can walk in front of you.
Still more room.
Without,
That's huge.
And you got to have height so that you're not looking. So it's got to have a good rake, and we have wide arms. And on the right side arm, we have and this is a unique design. We created it with an Australian seat company that has gone out of business now, called Chematic, where they designed it where we have a table tray that you pull out almost like on an airplane.
Okay.
And it comes out so you can have. We don't have. We're not in theater dining, and that's the other thing that I think is problematic. Alamo's had great success. Others have had great success doing this, but a lot of people it's a different business, and it's not a business I've ever wanted to try to get into, of having food run into the theater while the movie theater. I think it's very distracting. But we do serve hot food. We serve cocktails or beer and wine, but you can bring it in yourself, and you have a tray to do it. So I think what you want is you want to have very comfortable, nice seats, but they don't need to be, even notwithstanding the fact that the recliner revolutionized the industry when it came out several years ago. Truly, it did. I don't think that that's going to be enough to sustain it as we get into this next level of what's going to make this industry work.
Is the next level moving recliners? Is it D-Box? Is it 4DX?
I don't know about that. I mean, I've never, or the smells that come out and the smoke.
They're spitting water at you at the 4DX.
There's a whole thing.
Right?
Maybe, but that might save the mall theater, but it's not going to save, the smart house theater, and there's no such thing as an art house really anymore, but there are theaters, ours is among them, that play smart films and that overperform on smart films. So when Marty Supreme comes out, we're in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We're in the Denver branch of the reporting grosses. There are, I don't know, 100, 200 theaters, 300 theaters in that branch. When Marty Supreme comes out, I know we're going to be in the top 2 or 3 in the whole Denver branch, because Santa Fe has such a smart audience, and we have a theater that caters to people who appreciate smart cinema.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to one more business question. Andy, I'm sorry I keep hijacking because I know you want to talk about something else, but I got to ask about this Netflix thing, because I think this is a thing that's been really stuck in my craw a little bit. The Stranger Things theatrical release of the finale on New Year's Eve, the partnership that was struck with a selection of theaters offered free viewing of the 2-hour plus finale in theaters on New Year's, and consumers would go in and they would buy, they would have to buy like a $20 concessions discount. But everybody that I've talked to who actually attended, I did not, I watched it at home, but everybody I've talked to who actually attended absolutely loved the experience. They adored it.
Well, people love the cinema experience. Now AMC, I think AMC was one of the partners in that, and AMC is a company that's super over leveraged, and it's like, who's going to own AMC in 3 years? Who knows? It's just
you
Netflix.
Could, it sounds like.
I don't want to own AMC. Although there are some theaters I would like to own of AMC, but I don't know what to make it. We wanted to be on that too, and we normally can get on most of those things, but they were very, very selective on where they would do that. And I think they had some deals with some of the bigger circuits maybe, and they were given, they didn't really care what we wanted to do. We would have done well with it.
You would have done well with it, yeah.
We didn't need it. It wasn't the end of the day. I mean, at the end of the day, it was an end of the world for us. And Netflix, almost no Netflix film. Frankenstein did a little business. Almost no Netflix film does any theatrical business. They are not in the theatrical business.
They don't want it. Yeah.
They don't want it. They'll do it because the producer or the director or the star insists on something as part of the deal. So they'll do something, but it's a tepid little release. And they don't try. They don't care about it. They've been very clear about what they think about the theatrical experience, and they're the opposite of it. Now they're saying all the right things to get the regulators to approve their deal. Maybe they'll keep Warner Brothers intact in some ways. I think they're going to get the company. And I'm not sure that I'd rather have Paramount get it. I mean, those guys, the Ellisons running, Paramount and Warner Brothers, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
I'd take my chance with Netflix. And I think it's just going to open up new opportunities for companies that are like A24 to emerge, to do smart films, because there's going to be a void in the marketplace for smart films when Warner Brothers gets, consumed by Netflix, and we don't have smart big studio films coming out into the marketplace. There's going to be a void, and someone's going to fill it. That's just the way it works. I don't know how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, but there's plenty of people who are still making content and are wanting to make content. There's plenty of talented filmmakers. I've listened to several of them on your show. I mean, some of these cinematographers that you guys have had on there, it's just like next level of what these guys can do. And so there are people out there who can make good story-driven movies. And movies a different thing than a series. And Netflix is in the series business more than the movie business.
Right,
but it's a different thing. It's like, it's a thing that's not going to go away. Telling a story in hopefully closer to 90 minutes than 3 hours, ideally. But telling a story and so that you can consume in one bite, that's been going on for a long time, and it's not going away, regardless of who buys Warner Brothers.
However it ends up, right. Talk a little bit about your documentary that you have, A Savage Art, The Life and Cartoons of Pat Oliphant. You produced, directed this thing. This is, it's an interesting story about kind of the world of this, political cartooning, but specifically Pat and his career and kind of the importance that he had in that entire industry. What drew you to this? I know I grew up seeing his artwork in newspapers when I was little, and I didn't recognize what
didn't
it was.
Know it was him.
It looked like it was a cartoon, and so I'd look at it and I'd have no idea what the context was. So my dad would explain it to me, and or try at least. And eventually, once I got older, I was able to understand it. But it's one of these things that's been around for so long. So I'm curious, kind of how you came to wanting to tell the story of Pat and his cartoons.
Well, because I got to know Pat. He was my neighbor in Santa Fe 10 years ago. We met him. We came into his house on a Christmas Eve. Every Christmas Eve, they would have big parties, Pat and Susan Oliphant. And we went with some friends of ours. We were just new to town, and some friends were taking us around, and they took us into the Oliphant house, and it's full of people, just like, oh my God, there's just this salon going on Christmas Eve, and it was snowy that night. It was just magical. And I look over to the right, and over in the corner, there's a guy in a white puffy jacket and a red scarf and white hair, and it was David Byrne from the Talking Heads. Like, what have we walked into? And then we met Terry Allen and Joe Harvey Allen and the ambassador to Australia and whatever. So I was like, wow, I didn't really know his work before then. I knew I had heard about him. He was a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist. I knew that. But then I started to get to know him, and we only lived a block away, and we became friends. And I had never made a film before, and I'd always kind of wanted to. I'd produced a couple of films. I executive produced an Alex Gibney film years ago called Casino Jack and the United States of Money about Jack Abramoff. And my only involvement in that really was I had the original idea, and I reached out to Alex. We worked with him on Enron, a great film he did for us at Magnolia. And he had the same idea, kind of a different perspective. And so we went out and raised the money. I raised half, he raised half, and we did it. And so I became executive producer and had nothing at all to do with making the movie. Nothing at all. I showed up, and I don't even think I was invited to Sundance when it premiered. I was executive producer of. But I kind of gave me a little bit of a taste of wanting to get involved in filmmaking. And then I was actively involved as a producer, but more than a producer on a film called Starving the Beast, which is a film that I made with Steve Mims about the systemic defunding of public higher education over the last 40 years. All these really exciting ideas that people really that draws people to the cinema. I'm kidding.
Yeah. And defunding higher education, political corruption, institutional decay, real moneymakers.
Right. But I love that experience. And James Carville was kind of the star of that film. We covered 6 great research universities, including LSU, and he was animated about this subject of basically in 1980, 80% of the funding for a school like LSU or the University of Texas came from the state legislature. Now it's down to 10% or less, and so this is an important subject to him. So we covered 6 universities. I interviewed James Carville and all these other great people, and I really got a taste for making a documentary film at some point. And so then when I met Pat 10 years ago, and we just opened this 11-screen cinema in Santa Fe called Violet Crown, now called Sky Cinemas. Rupert Murdoch sued me for that, by the way. I won. We can circle back to that. And I had this idea of we don't show commercials at our theater. We do show into short films, things about local nonprofits, entertaining cinematic content for the 15 minutes before the trailers start. And I wanted to do a series of things with interesting people in Santa Fe, like little 4 or 5 minute vignettes. And so I asked Pat if he would be willing to do that, and he said yes. So I came over and with a camera person, and we filmed the first interview thinking this is what it was going to be. And then I just started realizing how interesting he is in his history and what he meant to editorial cartooning, to journalism, to politics. Over the last 50 years, there's not been anyone more influential in the field that he was in. And there never will be again, because the newspapers are gone. Editorial cartooning is a dying breed, sadly. And there's some great cartoonists out there. We showed this film to the Editorial Cartoonist Convention in DC shortly after we opened it in New York. And they just loved it. And I love that was sort of the real ratification, gratification for me, is that the guys who are still doing this work, that they had, that they had their sort of anthem, and this film is their anthem to an art craft that is under siege for all these years, and so important, and it's been so important over the years, and it's losing its importance.
Yeah, it was interesting in the story too. Well, I mean, one is great seeing like other faces of other people who, most of us only ever recognize them as the little name in the corner of the cartoon we happen to be looking at. So it was nice to actually put faces with all these people. But also, I thought as you journey through the story and you come toward the latter part of it, and you're talking about all the stuff that you have just mentioned about how it's had struggles with the way the changing media landscape, with the political landscape. Like there's a lot of attacks on this artwork, but I found it also interesting that a number of these people, like the meme creation community, has in some capacity kind of become the new version of this in a way. I thought that was an interesting like modernization of it.
Yeah, and it was interesting because Maureen Dowd, who does a great job in our film, and we premiered our film in DC at this really great documentary festival called DC Docs, and it happened on in early June, on the same day that Trump was having the military parade happening in DC. It was just a surreal day to be there. So there wasn't a great crowd, and I didn't know whether Maureen would come down, but she did come down, and she loved the film, but she said it made her sad that to think that memes were taking over what was once this great artwork of editorial cartoonists. And it is sad that in a way, but it's also that memes can never do that, because memes are not art. They're not original works of art. You and I could go download a meme software and create a meme this afternoon and publish it.
Right.
Doesn't mean we're artists. It's a different thing.
It's a different tool of expression.
It's a different tool.
Yeah, right.
But it is in the same vein. And Adam Ziglis, a great cartoonist from Buffalo, is the one that's really highlighted how memes have come along and have become much more influential than they have in the past, because they're so easy to create.
Yeah,
and we're in a secondary. We're in a world now where everyone just has a second of time. Unless you're going to go see Avatar, then you need 3 hours.
Outstanding callback.
Yeah.
I gotta ask though, in this process of you deciding, in my head it's there's Bill, and he decides he's young and he wants to become a filmmaker. So he says, first I'm going to go to law school, and I'm going to become a chief counsel. I'm going to run some companies, and then I'm finally going to make a film of my very own. I got to know what the journey of actual creation is like for you at this point in your life, having seen what you've seen, taking the reins to direct the film yourself now.
So I didn't know whether I could do it. I mean, once I started to do it, I felt the burden of friendship towards Pat and Susan Oliphant to finish it. Because once I announced that I wanted to do it, of course, other people were coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, we want to do this film. And then, of course, they wanted me to pay for it. And like, no, I'm going to do this. And it took me 7 years to do it. I had different people helping me along the way. COVID interrupted. I was making progress, and I'm back, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I brought along, I asked my longest friend in the world. We grew up together in Los Angeles, met in junior high, Paul O'Brien, who's an editor in Hollywood, and a writer and a filmmaker, and a great guy. Probably my best friend in the world, and we've been friends forever. I said, Paul, I need you to look at what we got. Help me. And he started giving me notes. And then I just said, Paul, I need you. I need your help. And so he came on as a producer with me for the last 2 years and really just sort of helped me pull it together. So I just sort of went down the path 7 years ago, believing that we were going to find what my approach was. I knew who I wanted to interview. I knew I wanted to interview various cartoonists. I knew I wanted to interview, people like Ed Sorel, who's in our film, who's 96 and amazing, and was on stage with me at the IFC Center in New York when we premiered in New York. And he's sharp as a tack. And has more New York covers on the New Yorker than any cartoonist ever has.
Wow.
And I knew I wanted to interview, some Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonists like Ann Tilnes and Adam Ziglas. I got lucky with Grant Oliphant, Pat's son. He became sort of a narrator to the film. He was just fabulous.
Outstanding.
We loaded him up, and he took us through. And then the story just kind of came together towards the end when I went out to Arizona and interviewed Susan Oliphant, Pat's daughter, who I had not met. And she travels around with her partner in RVs across the country, and like in Arizona in the winter at a nudist RV park is where I interviewed her. So I show up and fly into Arizona from Albuquerque and drive over. I met a cinematographer, Dean Aliato, who was also an editor in our film. He flew in from LA, and we went over there. And it was distracting. Like you're doing this interview outside, and then you hear a RV door shut, and you see some nude woman walk out. It was really super interesting. But
ironically, it's the subject of your follow-up.
Exactly. And so, but she was great. And what I learned in that interview was that when she was the youngest of the 3 children, when he became very famous, he won the Pulitzer Prize. They're moving from Denver to Washington, where he was going to become the cartoonist for the Washington Star. They move across. She drives in the car with the mom and the brother and the sister and the dog. They get to DC. He shows up and he hands the keys to the house to the wife and says, "Here you go. I'm not moving in." And she didn't see him, I think, for the next 10 years.
Wow.
And I was like, holy fuck. How do we get this? And I said, number one, this is my friend, Pat Oliphant, and I don't want to. And so we really struggled with how to bring the family element into it, the real humanity of him. And we concluded that, he was a flamethrower. He would want it no other way than to tell it like it is. So we essentially told it like it was.
Yeah.
And that came in sort of at the very end. And I think that to me helped make the film a really good film. And I think it is a really good film.
Yeah. The world of political cartooning obviously can lead you into minefields as far as like how you're portraying stuff, the politics of it and everything. Was that something that a line you were dancing on as far as like, are we taking a stance politically with this?
No, you got to, because no one wants to see, some progressive Democrats documentary film. It's got to be a balanced thing. It turns out, and turns out that Pat was balanced. He hated the Democrats as much as he hated the Republicans.
Right.
He just hated politicians.
Make fun of everyone equally, right?
But what I found was when I was promoting this film and I was showing it in my own theater here, I decided to do a series of cartoons, contemporary cartoons, like show them in the pre-show, just because they're so great, and just give people. And we got some. And I'm always very careful in my movie theaters not to take a political side. You just don't win doing that. And we got some blowback from people who thought, because everything that you see in editorial cartooning now is making fun of Trump.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all you see.
Yeah.
And so if you got some MAGA guy sitting in your theater and he's seeing these editorial cartoons making fun of Trump, he doesn't feel good about that.
Yeah. Right.
No. Yeah, it's tricky. It certainly is tricky. And in the world of trying to, sell product and get it out there, it can make it hard. But I mean, you're telling the story of a political cartoonist. And I think watching this, I think you do a good job of keeping the balance of showing how he really was making fun of everyone. Like it's whoever's in office. It's just like Saturday Night Live, any of these things. It's just like who's our target? It's the one who's on the pedestal at the moment.
Well, that tableau that comes up of the presidential heads in all of the different degrees is a real sign. Like I mean, it is beautiful because it's a reminder, actually, as balanced as it is, as much as he hates politicians of all stripes, it is such a fantastic reminder that it's okay to say hard things out loud. And we don't have to protect ourselves from hard things said out loud. I think it's such a great film. And after years of you, in some capacity or another, enabling other filmmakers, it is about damn time, man. Savage Art is great, and I'm so just thrilled that you're doing this.
Thank you. Well, it's out on streaming services now, so people can find it. If they want to go take a look at it, please do.
Absolutely. We'll put the link in the show notes so people can check it out. It's definitely worth a look. Let's turn our attention, though, and start talking about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou a little bit. Jump into this Coen Brothers movie. You had quite a difficult time kind of narrowing down to the film that we were going to be talking about. I know I went through quite a number of lists of options. What was it that drew you to this one to finally land on?
It's just so fun. I mean, Tim Blake Nelson and John Turturro and George Clooney. I mean, my God, what a great comic actor.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He is. And Roger Deakins, I mean, the cinematography is so spectacular. The way that colors, go in and out of different types of shades. I love, it's a story about the South. It's a great comedy with great performances, and I think it's just one of the Coen Brothers' best films. I mean, they've had many great films, and No Country for Old Men was another one that I was thinking of. I don't know if you guys have covered that yet. Mm-mm. I think Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, just for, again, it's, I don't know, an hour and 40 minutes. It's the perfect length for a film, in my opinion, and it keeps you all the way. It has redemption. It has humor. It's, I guess it's the adaptation of a Greek tragedy
of the Odyssey, right?
Yeah, which is also coming out this year, which I'm very excited about.
Christopher Nolan, right?
Yeah, because he's another one of those great filmmakers who will keep this industry alive, I believe. I just thought it was just brilliant on every level and entertaining on every level. John Goodman was, incredibly
as our Cyclops.
Right.
Yeah. I love when he turns when he's wearing the KKK outfit and he turns and he's just got the one eye cut out.
No, it was those little girls were so great in it.
He's a keeper.
Yeah. He's a keeper. Anyway, it's fun. It's just a fun movie. Smart movie. It's the kind of movie that we need more of.
It's such an interesting pick, especially after looking at what you've done, what you've helped to fund, what you've released, that you pick a movie that's a comedy, but also ostensibly a comedy about institutional corruption and policing. And I wonder how today's eyes, as you revisit this film, what is it that still feels sort of unresolved or kind of alive to you from that perspective, from what the Coens are doing, showcasing, this part of history and its complexity?
Well, I mean, look where we are. We're going backwards as a society fast in terms of human rights and racism and all of these things under this second Trump world that we're in. So I think that all of the things that we saw in Oh Brother were out there that, that they're not resolved. We're not in a different, we thought we were getting into a different place, I think, but we find ourselves sliding back to a place that's not too different, from the community that was around in the setting of that film.
It's an interesting setting because, I mean, in the original story, Odysseus was off fighting the Trojan War, right? The whole battle and journeying home. So he was this hero. And in this version of the story that the Coens choose to tell us, Homer he's in prison, or he's working on the chain gang. He had tried running a law office, being a lawyer without a law license, as it turns out. And so that's the world that we're getting. Like, we're taking our hero, this war hero, and turning him into just a kind of like a schemer who's trying to just
right.
Like get the money.
And then he was trying to recruit his Holly Hunt back. And he says, "Hey, we can move to a different state. I can become a dentist, without being a dentist."
Yeah.
He was, he's just
hasn't learned anything. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he wasn't a character with a lot of character. I mean, there was not a lot of integrity to the character. I don't know the original work, so I can't. You sounds like it reasonably well.
Well, I mean, only probably that much. I mean, it was one of those books that we had to read like in high school, and so it was probably the last time I read it. But I just remember a lot of the parts of it, like that Homer,
the sirens,
Odysseus is they pass the sirens. There's the Cyclops. There's the Lotus Eaters and like things like that they kind of translated over to the story here. But it's just, I find that part of it so interesting, like that the big change is that he's not, I mean, they could have made him a war hero or something, somebody who had fought in World War I or something and was making his way back home to his wife after all this time. But no, they chose to make him this schemer. And I feel like that's so Coen Brothers.
It is. It's so Coen Brothers, and it so works. And it's, I hope, are they still making movies, or do they have anything coming out? Do you know?
Ethan had just had a movie Drive By. No, what was the one that just came out?
Drive By Dolls or something.
Drive By Dolls, and then he did another one last year, and I can't remember what it's called. But
and both of them were kind of.
Joel did the Tragedy of Macbeth, and then I don't think he's done another one since. So, and I don't know if they're planning on coming back together. I'm not sure what.
Well, they've contributed enough. I think they can rest if they want. They sure have done that.
No kidding. Incredible body of work that they've created with all of their movies. And it's also interesting because as a duo, like we've seen them fluctuate back and forth between comedy and drama, and they've always done that really well, or more dramatic crime films, whatever, but they've danced that line really well. And now that they've kind of separated, Ethan seems to be the comedy force and Joel seems to be the drama force. And I wonder if that was kind of how the dynamic was when they were working together. It's like, okay, you get one and then I get one sort of thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, who directed No Country for Old Men? Was that Joel or Ethan?
They did that one together, I believe. Well, because they were always technically directing together.
Well, I think technically Joel directed Oh Brother. Did he not? Am I wrong about that?
Well, per the DGA, they had, there was a whole thing with the DGA where the DGA would only let you have one director, even if it was like, unless it was I can't remember the whole thing, but they finally at some point started getting things listed as directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. But up until a certain point, I think Ethan was the producer and Ethan was the credited producer, Joel was the credited director, but they both were kind of doing all of it.
Yeah.
Ethan did Honey Don't.
Honey Don't that was the one last year that he did.
That was the one last year. And Joel has one upcoming that he's directing, and Ethan does not, at least on IMDb.
Yeah.
But Joel's got Jack of Spades, which I've heard nothing about.
Does it say who's going to be in that film?
Yeah, it's a gothic mystery unfolding in the atmospheric setting of 1880s Scotland. So it's going to be a real
nice.
barn burner of a comedy. Josh O'Connor, Damian Lewis, Frances McDormand, Natch, Leslie Manville, and Ian Barrett. Looks like
that's great.
Interested. Josh O'Connor's having a moment.
Yeah, and Damian
that'll be
Lewis is terrific.
Oh, yeah. Since Band of Brothers, there isn't a thing I wouldn't see with him in it. So it's fascinating. It's also fascinating because it's an unassuming film that is surprisingly technically relevant, right? Its history of how they approached demonstrating history through color in this film was, at the time, we forget just how novel it was, and the look, I think, is just plain stunning from the opening frame when they are running through the fields. It's incredible.
It's stunning. It is, and so I do. It's just, you can watch that and you feel so satisfied, like you just were awash with a great masterpiece. Even though it's a comedy, it can be a masterpiece, and I think it is a masterpiece.
It's really kind of like, technically, I always think it's the first, but I think it's just one of the first films where they really started playing with that digital intermediate, the color intermediate, and that's what suddenly made this look like. I mean, the time that Roger Deakins spent working with the technical side of this film to kind of repaint almost the entire world. I mean, it was mind-boggling. I remember when it came out, it's just like, wow, I'd never seen anything like this. And now it's kind of like, a dime a dozen. People are playing with the digital intermediates all the time because it's become just such a common practice in the production side of it. But to see this for the first time, and just the way that the wash of color had just changed to kind of create this something that felt like this sepia world, but it felt so rich still. I mean, it's truly like,
and the music,
masterful.
The music was just incredible, and I think won all sorts of Grammys with that album. I think that was T-Bone Burnett who was the guy who put that music together. It just satisfies in every way. I could watch it, every day.
The movie's unapologetically specific in terms of dialects and landscapes and traditions. And you're right, it's a Southern movie. But I'm curious, as someone who's run theaters across the country and seen movies run across the country, how does this play regionally? Do you find that it plays differently across the years? Is this a movie that you'd pop open in your theater right now and see excellent uptake?
Oh yeah, so this is a movie that would play across the country in the smart house theaters, in the art house theater. It's an elevated. It's a Marty Supreme. It's a thing that appeals to a elevated audience, to a more sophisticated cinema audience. And it doesn't matter whether they're in Milwaukee or Atlanta. It might overperform in certain places where it was actually locations were shot, I think, but generally it's going to perform well. And if you look back on the history of it, I think you're going to see that it did very well in the landmark style theaters across the country, no matter where they were located.
I think the Coen brothers have always kind of tapped into that line that I think it's hard for directors to achieve, of making films ostensibly, I'll just say, for Hollywood in the studio system, but that still feel like they have their independent voice, right? And I know some of them, like, I think Fargo, I don't think that was released by one of the major studios. I'll have to look. But they're one of these people who, I guess it's just, as you were saying, it's kind of like these filmmakers who have a very particular voice. And that's the thing that draw people in, right?
Yeah, and it used to be that, when Fox was independent, I think you had Disney and Fox sort of competing for this sort of product more. You had Miramax that was, despite what people might think about Harvey Weinstein, those guys were brilliant. I mean, the body of work that Miramax released over the years, you don't have that anymore. This is that type of film. And I just think we have a studio system now that Fox and Disney are just one company. Now that Warner Brothers is going to soon be with Netflix probably. And, you just have less of a big studio system infrastructure for these things to work through. They just don't really fit, I think, anymore. Now it's going to be the A24s of the world, which is, creating Marty Supreme, of course, that are going to create these. Although I think that Song Sung Blue, which is not the quality of film by any means that Oh Brother is, but I think that was a studio film. Was that a Warner Brothers? Who released that film?
That is Focus Features.
Focus, yeah. So Focus, as a subsidiary of Universal, they still exist. Fox Searchlight still exists. They still create films. I think there's just it's harder to get through the studio system with a smart film because you can't point to a specific metric that's going to say, invest this amount of money and we can guarantee this kind of return. When you're trying to create quality films, it just doesn't work that way. But you can, say, okay, I'm James Cameron. I'm going to put $400 million of your money in this, but here's over the course of the world release, I can guarantee you're going to make money. And they're making money. They are going to make money.
Yeah, there is a line. And I think that's what's interesting with the Coen brothers is even a story like this that is, it's based on a Greek epic, right? And it is a journey film. We have them journeying across, I don't know, across Missouri trying to get back home or Mississippi. I mean, as they kind of like run into all these things. So it still has that kind of picaresque journey type of story that we're having here. And so in some sense, it doesn't feel independent, and this one, I mean, as far as the Coen brothers, I mean, it was Buena Vista who is distributing this one. So they definitely had a bigger distributor for this film. And it was Polygram who did Fargo. So it's interesting that they have fluctuated back and forth between like working with Fox like they did in their early days with like Raising Arizona and stuff, and then moving into a lot more of these independent things, yet they still feel so big in the scope of their stories. And this one feels like a huge story. Like there's so much going on in this film.
Yeah, no, we just don't see movies like this much anymore. I don't know when the last time, what in the last 2 years can you point to that is a film of this type that is smart, funny, big in scope and production quality, but very kind of independent in terms of the way the story that it tells. I don't know that it doesn't fit into a formula that exists anymore. I think
comedy's hard, right? I mean, I think that's a big thing. Like, where is comedy these days? Like, what are the big comedy films that people are gravitating to?
Yeah, what are comedies that pull people into your theater?
Right. Zootopia 2. People like that. And if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's good.
I hear it's
comedy.
Great.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's really great. But there used to be, those raunchy comedies that were so great. And they stopped making those for some reason.
They kind of had their run. And then, I don't know. I'm not sure
American Pies, Neighbors, right?
Yeah.
The earlier Seth Rogens.
Those
kind of where the swan song.
Even up to like Bridesmaids, that was more recent.
Hangover,
Oh, for sure.
So they come around every now and then, but
yeah,
I think it's all sort of cyclical in nature. Who's in charge of what studio and what movies are not going away. People have been saying that for a long time, ever since the television was introduced, and then VCRs were introduced, and then streaming was happening. And when we at Magnolia, we were the first to do Day and Date. It was a Steven Soderbergh film called Bubble that we produced and distributed at Magnolia. And by then, Cuban and Wagner had bought Landmark Theaters. And so they had the theaters and they had the film, and so they could do it. It was a very, very small, tiny little art film, a good one, but very tiny. And what I've seen over time is I don't think streaming has a huge effect on theatrical. It's not smart for the big films. We're still playing One Battle After Another on occasional shows here, even though it's been out by Warner Brothers now for weeks on streaming. And so we still play it and we still find some audience for it. But I don't see that streaming is really a huge threat. When COVID hit, some of the film companies just took their whole 2020 theatrical slate and just shoved them out onto streaming platforms. Warner Brothers was one of them. They pushed them out. And then that created a real problem for post-COVID because the cupboard was bare. And then we were in a period where there wasn't a lot of production going on. Then we had writer strikes and so forth. And it really created a problem. But what I think Warner Brothers and the other studios learned about that is that they make more money if they release these big films theatrically. It costs them, it's just a way to get awareness for the title so that when it does go to streaming, it'll have a bigger audience. And they make good money on it as well because, they send a hard drive to a theater. The cost is nothing, and they get 55% of the box office. They don't have to pay for air conditioning or real estate taxes or anything else. They just send the hard drive. It's a good business, and I think there's a realization that part of the business, the theatrical revenue that studios have historically earned, is an important part of the whole ecosystem of a film. And so I don't see streaming, notwithstanding what Netflix may do with Warner Bros., I don't see it gobbling the industry because the realities of the marketplace are such that there's money to be made by big movies going into theaters before they go to streaming. It doesn't hurt the streaming run that they ran for a month in a theater. It helps the streaming run.
Yet they still want to shorten the window, right?
They still want to shorten the window. They want to go 2 weeks. They want to.
I know.
And I just think a theater has to be flexible, and I think theaters will close.
Yeah.
I think we'll be in a contraction of the theatrical business over the next 10 years. And I think the theaters that are going to come out of that are going to be theaters where the experience of going to that place is distinctive.
Sure.
And the suburban and the mall theaters that don't offer a distinctive experience, I think those are going to go away. And not entirely, but to some great degree.
Well, and as far as like this film, I had a great time rewatching it the other night, but I was watching it by myself, I was chuckling to myself, I was enjoying it, but it still doesn't beat the experience of like having seen this in the theater when it came out and having an auditorium full of people just laughing uproariously at these characters that the Coens had created. And little things like "Go for Everett," like little bits like that. Like, the audience is in stitches, and like that's what it's for.
Yeah. No, me and Pete already had a gopher.
Oh man,
Tim Blake Nelson is brilliant. He's a brilliant actor, and he's particularly brilliant in this film. And he's perfect. The Coens are amazing how they cast this film and the people they got in place. Holly Hunt, the way she, played Clooney's.
Obsessed with one thing, getting that ring.
Getting that ring.
Right.
Just beautiful.
And she's already worked with them before in these movies, so has a sense as to the Coen Brothers style. And I think a lot of these actors that we see, like a lot of these directors that we've been talking about, Christopher Nolan and people like Wes Anderson, like they end up getting so many of these actors who just love working with them that they keep coming back. They keep bringing them back. Like Charles Durning has been in a bunch, John Turturro, George Clooney. This was his first with them, but he would end up doing a few more with them. John Goodman, obviously. And like they create a family and they find a group who they know what they can do, and they end up just delivering. Like Charles Durning, when he comes out on that stage at the end and is just doing his little jig, those guys, like, it just cracks me up. He's just like, what a smooth politician, the way that he's like latching on to the popularity of these guys, I love it. That's a great movie.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Good pick.
Well, we really appreciate you bringing this to chat about with us. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Bill.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Come down and visit us in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking for some theater property here in Portland for you. I'll send you some notes.
Okay.
available leases.
Yeah, I'm sure my wife will be thrilled.
Yeah. Right.
Here we go again.
Yep.
Well, your movie is called Savage Art, the life and cartoons of Pat Oliphant, and I believe the link for it is just savageart.com if people want to learn more about it, correct?
Correct. It's well reviewed. Deadline named it one of the top 10 most Oscar-worthy documentaries of the year.
Fantastic.
Which was just a head fake because we didn't make the short list, but that's a
But hey,
thing.
yeah. It's always nice to hear, though. Yeah.
Yeah, we opened it up in September with a really great New York Times review, and then we opened it in Washington, D.C. the next week, and we couldn't get the Washington Post to review it, which is like such a commentary on where we are in journalism, and there's the contraction of journalism. But the movie's great. It's going to live on. Pat he lives right down the street from me. He's 90 years old and not in great health. His wife, Susan, who is in the film, she passed away 3 weeks ago. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
but fortunately, we were able to get this film finished after 7 years. We got it finished in time so that they could enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's a real tribute to this man and his career, and what a fearless fighter for truth and justice he was. And we need more people like him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a fantastic film. Yeah.
Well, we'll put that link in the show notes. Send me the show notes for your theater. I'll make sure that's or the link for your theater, and I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
And everyone needs to check all that stuff out. Again, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for everyone out there, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network and the Next Reel family of film podcasts. The music is Chomp Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at The Next Reel. Learn about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time.
Hi, this is Tony Meaches,
Hi, and this is John Matthews.
and we are the co-hosts of the podcast Imprint Cast, the podcast dedicated to the Australian boutique label Imprint Films.
Yes, if you want to know everything related to imprint or in the imprint world, this is the podcast for you as we cover announcements and also upcoming releases from the imprint lineup.
Yes, and we are not the only hosts on this show. We also have family members. They include Suzanne Boleyn, Paul Berryman, Jim Mulvihill, as well as Ryan Kendall.
Also joining us are content creators who contribute to the imprint releases, doing commentaries, essays. They're actually on the show discussing the releases they worked on via deep dive episodes covering various titles.
You can also watch our videos on certain episodes with the content creators as well as us, as well as the family members. And of course, you can always listen to this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, and our YouTube channel, Imprintcast.
And don't forget, Imprintcast is a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.